Welcome to the Ultimate Sports Podcast. Today's guest is the host of the brand new show, You Better, You Bet, on radio.com. He does work on OddsShark and Sports Illustrated too. Nick Kostos, how are you doing today?
Madison, what's going on? I've been a fan of yours for a long time. I love the work that you're doing, like young budding star in the sports media field here in the New York metropolitan area. Love your analysis of the Giants and the Yankees and the Knicks and just your passion for New York sports and sports in general. So honored to be here on the show, and thank you very much for having me.
Oh, no problem. I always wanted to get you on. I was hopefully before the college football and the NFL seasons, because I know you love gambling. I love gambling. So it's like a perfect guest for me to have on to talk about some gambling things before the season starts. And I am also a Rangers fan, so I can't not leave out the Rangers once it comes to hockey season, too.
There you go.
In terms of my favorite teams. So, yeah, we have the same favorite teams, and we feel the same way about a lot of different things within our favorite sports teams. But that's for another day. I want to have you on to talk about the college and the NFL season win totals and some other odds and whatnot. But before we get to that, I want you to talk about your new show a little bit.
Really appreciate the opportunity to do that, yeah. The show is called You Better, You Bet. I co-host the show along with Joe Ostrowski, who is in Chicago, Danny Parkins, another host in Chicago, and a guy named Ken Barkley, Lockie Lockerson, who is one of Scott Van Pelt's former producers at ESPN, who does a great job. And Eli Herskovich, our producer, does a terrific job. The show is a lot of fun because we're literally on live while games are going on. So from like the 6 o'clock hour to 7, like we're previewing games, we give our bets, and then we literally sweat the bets for 3 hours in addition to, talking fantasy and talking gambling. It's just really a lot of fun. It's a vehicle that allows us to be ourselves. We don't take ourselves too seriously. We take the show seriously. We want to put on a good show, but we don't take ourselves too seriously. So we have a lot of fun. It really is it's the perfect vehicle for me. I'm thrilled to do it. I'm thrilled to be a part of radio.com, and also thrilled to be a part of Sports Illustrated this coming season as well. So I'm really looking forward to this football season and really love doing the show, and would appreciate if everyone downloaded the radio.com app or go to radio.com and check it out Monday through Friday, 6 to 10 p.m. Eastern. And then starting on Sunday, September 8th, Week 1 NFL Sundays, I'll be hosting from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m., getting everyone set to gamble on the day in the NFL.
Oh, wow. That part I didn't know about, the Sunday part. Now I know where to go on Sunday mornings before
Thank you.
Before I head over to watch football. But, yeah, speaking of football, it all begins tomorrow. We don't like saying Week 0, but that's what I call it anyway. For college football, you have Miami and Florida, and then Arizona and Hawaii. I'm sure you guys will be talking about those two games on your show tonight. But I want to talk about win totals right now. I have FanDuel pulled up on my laptop in front of me, and I would like to pick your favorite of the over-unders in every college football conference, and we'll get to the NFL divisions as well. I'm talking about Power 5, and then we'll do one group of 5 or independent later on. But I'll go first on this one. My favorite ACC over-under that I like is Florida State over 7. I just think that their schedule is a little bit favorable to them. I like Cam Akers. He's the young running back. I believe he's a junior already, if I'm not mistaken. They had the year from hell last year, Florida State. I just think they bounce back, and they make the ACC a little bit interesting. I don't think they'll upset Clemson or anything like that, but I just think they'll win over 7 games. What do you like in the ACC in terms of win totals?
Madison, I totally agree with you on Florida State. I love Florida State this year. And I think here's what we really look at with Florida State. You're right about Cam Akers, obviously a stud running back. And I actually like James Blackman, the returning quarterback. The bugaboo for Florida State last year, obviously, was maybe, and this is not an exaggeration, and this is kind of I want this to kind of sink in for the listeners, right? There are 120-some-odd college football teams, right, in top division. Florida State might have had the worst offensive line out of any school in the top division in college football, the number 1 worst offensive line. If it wasn't the worst, it was in a handful of the worst offensive lines. Even if Florida State gets below average offensive line play, that's bad, but not the worst offensive line of all time. I think they should easily be able to hit this win total and go over the total. So I'm with you on Florida State. I like Florida State over 7 as well. And all the reports out of Tallahassee, like the players are buying into the culture, the Willie Taggart's implementing year 2 post Jimbo Fisher era. So I really like Florida State. I'll give you another one just so we don't go with the same one. I like the University of Miami over 8.5. And you mentioned the Week 0 game tomorrow as we tape this on the Friday before Week 0, Friday, August 23rd. I like Miami getting the 7 points against Florida in that game, and I give the Hurricanes a chance to win that game outright. Miami's over-under is 8.5, and I like this coaching staff. The new coach with Manny Diaz, the former defensive coordinator, Dan Enos, coming over to run the offense from Alabama. The highly touted redshirt freshman quarterback, Jaron Williams, set to start. Miami's ceiling, I think, is actually pretty high because there's some variance involved there with a new coach and a new quarterback. Now, you can make the case, maybe the coach stinks, maybe the quarterback stinks, sure, but I'm willing to bet on talent here, talent in this linebacking core, and I like this quarterback, and I like the Manny Diaz hire, and if Miami can beat Florida tomorrow, and I give them a chance to do that, I think it's an easy cash, and I think the Hurricanes can get to 9 either way. The schedule is favorable this year for the University of Miami.
Yes, the schedule is favorable. I believe they have the Seminoles at home, if I'm not mistaken. Too bad they don't.
They don't play Clemson.
They don't play Clemson.
They should be able to win 9 games this year.
Yes, they have a very favorable schedule. I'm not sure who I'm going to pick in the Miami-Florida game, although I think the line is just about right at 7.5. I just don't know who to pick straight up.
I don't. I think that line should be like Florida -4. I think there's some major value with Miami catching the 7, and I kind of kicking myself for not hopping on it when it was 7.5. But I do have a bet on Miami right now plus the 7. Like I said, I think that line is like 3 points off, so I do think there's a good amount of value on the Hurricanes. But I mean, we'll see. Florida could easily win the game by 10. We'll see what happens tomorrow.
Yeah, I said I like Miami against the spread, but I don't know who I'm going to pick straight up to win that game. Let's go over to the Big Ten now. You can go first on this one. A lot of interesting win totals here in the Big Ten. I know everyone's talking about Michigan and Ohio State. Some people like Iowa to win the West. Who do you like in the Big Ten in terms of a win total perspective?
Well, I'm going to give you 2, and I'm going to give you 2 schools that you didn't mention just now. I like Ohio State under 10.5 wins. Justin Fields is a highly regarded prospect. He'll be the starting quarterback for Ohio State now, year 1 Ryan Day in the post-Urban Meyer era. We've never really seen Justin Fields do anything. Now, I'm not saying he's going to be bad. I think he's going to put up big numbers. He's obviously a fantastic athlete. But I think as far as like a win total of 10.5 goes, Ohio State has shown the last couple of years and kind of puzzling losses to Iowa 2 years ago and then to Purdue last year. And that was with Urban Meyer as the coach, that they have the ability to go out there and lose these games that quite frankly, they should be able to win. I think that Michigan is better than Ohio State this year, and I think that this is the year that Michigan Jim Harbaugh finally beats Ohio State. That's going to be a loss, and I think Ohio State's definitely going to lose at least one other game. I don't know when it's going to be, but Ohio State is not running the table in the Big Ten besides for Michigan. So I feel very strong about that Ohio State under. And one over pick that I really like a lot, and this is kind of my dark horse team in the Big Ten in general, is Mark D'Antonio, Brian Lewerke, and the Michigan State Spartans. Obviously, a rough year last year. Lewerke returning at quarterback. That total is 7.5. I think Michigan State should easily be able to win 8 games. I wouldn't be shocked if Sparty won 9 or 10 games. So I'm bullish on Michigan State this season. So I would go over on the Spartans, and I'm going under on the Ohio State Buckeyes.
I think I picked Michigan State to go 9-3, so I agree with you on Michigan State. But that's not my pick, though. I like Maryland over 4. They have a new coach coming in. The guy that was from
Mike Loxley, of course, yeah.
Yeah, they have the new coach coming in. There's some comparisons I saw. I like to listen to The Bear and Chris Felica for college football stuff and over-unders and whatnot, and they compare this to Herm Edwards a little bit in the sense that nobody liked the Herm Edwards hire, and Arizona State overachieved the year ago, and I kind of can see it with Maryland. Their schedule breaks right for them. They have Rutgers at home. They have Syracuse at home, which is a tough game, but they have some key pieces returning, so I wouldn't be surprised if Maryland made a bowl game. Their over-under is 4, which to me is a number too low. And by the way, -140 on the over.
Okay, I like it. I may put some money down on that. You convinced me on Maryland.
Oh, wow. But yeah, -140 on the over. And by the way, the Spartans, -180 on the over 7.5. So a lot of the public agreeing with you about Sparty there in the Big Ten. How about the Big 12? There's some interesting ones there. Obviously, I'll talk about Oklahoma and then Texas and whether they're back or not. So what do you like in the Big 12?
I need to be honest with you and your audience. I don't really like any win totals in the Big 12. I think the Big 12 could go. Obviously, you've got the two teams at the top in Oklahoma and Texas. And then I think you can make a legitimate case for like 4 or 5 other schools to potentially slot in there behind Oklahoma and Texas. There's so much unknown, a number of new coaches in this conference. But since, doing this podcast with you and you asked me to make a pick, I'm going to make a pick. And not only am I going to make a pick, but I'm going to make the biggest pick that you could possibly make. And I am going to go under 10.5 on Lincoln Riley, Jalen Hurts, and the Oklahoma Sooners. And here's why I'm going to do that. Now, Jalen Hurts is going to put up big numbers, right? Jalen Hurts is showing at Alabama that he's a very capable, competent college quarterback. He's playing in the Lincoln Riley air raid system. He's going to put up those numbers. But here's where I kind of get tripped up on Oklahoma this year. Oklahoma the last couple of years has had sent back-to-back quarterbacks win the Heisman Trophy in Baker Mayfield and Kyler Murray. But these were not like Eric Crouch, Tim Tebow-style Heisman Trophy winners. And I know Tebow went in the first round of the draft, but like Tim Tebow was never going to be the pro prospect that either Baker or Kyler were or are. So like these were guys that not only won the Heisman Trophy at the college level, but were the #1 overall picks in the NFL draft. Now, I am willing to go out there on a limb, right? There is a 0% chance that Jalen Hurts is selected #1 overall or even in the first round or maybe even on day 2 of the NFL draft. So there is a drop-off there from Baker and Kyler to Jalen Hurts. And I just envision a scenario where Oklahoma, at some point late in the year, on the road, is going to need a score late in the game. And I don't know if they're going to be able to get it the way that Baker was able to get it or Kyler was able to get it. And I like Texas more than a lot of people do. I do think LSU is going to wax Texas when they play them. But I give Texas a great shot to beat Oklahoma. I think that's going to be a loss for Oklahoma. And I think they'll lose one other game in conference play. Now, I don't love it. I'm not rushing out to bet the Oklahoma under, but you asked me to make a pick. I'm a little down on the Sooners this year. I don't think this is going to be an 11-win team in the regular season.
I agree with you. I have them going 10-2, but that's not my favorite pick. My favorite Big 12 pick, I'm going to go with an under. I'm going to take Texas Tech's under. The total is 6 for them. I'm trying to find the juice number. Plus 125, so that's a lot of value. So you mentioned how there's the Big 12 and there's a lot of teams that could challenge for the top with Oklahoma and Texas. But Texas Tech, to me, they have a new coach. But somebody has to go under, right? So I'm going to say it's Texas Tech with their new coach. Their schedule isn't favorable to me. They have to go on the road at some teams. They have to go to Arizona. That's going to be a tough game for them. Although I think they can win that game, but it won't be easy. But I'm going to go under Texas Tech because I just don't see them making a bowl game under their new coach this year. Although I could be completely wrong and that could be a push, but I just have a feeling about Texas Tech.
I do want to throw this out there kind of in support of what you just said, because just as you're talking about it, I'm kind of thinking about some other schools in the Big 12. And if you like a number of schools to go over, this is one of those things where when you sit down and kind of go over this, it's like you have a tendency, not you specifically, but people in general, right? To kind of you end up with imbalanced wins and losses, right? When if you like a team to win a lot of games, then science, math, and physics kind of dictate that team has to lose a lot of games if a team's going to win. So if we like Oklahoma and if we like Texas the best, which I think we both do, right? Even though we like the Oklahoma under, we acknowledge Oklahoma's probably, if not the best, the second best team. I like Iowa State with Brock Purdy and Matt Campbell better than I like Texas Tech. I like Baylor with Matt Rule better than I like Texas Tech. I like Oklahoma State with Mike Gundy better than I like Texas Tech. And I like TCU with Gary Patterson more than I like Texas Tech. So, if we like all of these schools more than Texas Tech, then I think Texas Tech is probably a good under bet. So I'm with you on that.
Yeah, Texas Tech is a very good under bet. You mentioned all the schools that I like better than Texas Tech. And I think Baylor and Iowa State could potentially finish second or third in the Big 12, possibly. I'm not going to rule out that possibility.
That's the realm of possibility. And I think
favorable
lot of people
schedules.
Like TCU, whom I respect, and Iowa State's got the coach and the quarterback, so I could see that happening also. I would not be shocked if that happens.
Yeah, and you mentioned how Texas has the rough game against LSU on their schedule, and Texas has some interesting road tests as well. So I wouldn't be flabbergasted if Baylor or Iowa State or both of them finish ahead of Texas in the Big 12. Let's switch over to the Pac-12. My pick, I think you're going to agree with a lot. You're high on this team. That's the Stanford Cardinal. Their win total is 6.5, and to me that's dumbfounding. I like David Shaw. I like KJ Costello. Then the over 6.5 is -140. I'm going to jump on it. They have some interesting games at home. They have to go to USC, which won't be easy, and JT Daniels. But I just like the Stanford over. That's a team that normally is a winner. So I'm definitely taking their over. What about you?
I love your call on Stanford, and I love the fact, and this is why like I pumped you up on Twitter a bunch as much as I can because like you have been doing this for a very long time, and I want to pay you the ultimate compliment here. Your knowledge of all these sports and all these conferences is very impressive to me. So you brought up a guy in KJ Costello, whom I think not a lot of the nation knows about, Stanford's quarterback, and I think by the end of this season, KJ Costello is going to be a first-round pick in next year's NFL draft at the quarterback position. So I like Stanford quite a bit. I'm with you as well, and I can't wait to bet on Stanford in their Week 1 game against Northwestern. Northwestern losing Clayton Thorson, not that Clayton Thorson's Peyton Manning, but they're going to have to replace a quarterback, and I love KJ Costello, love David Shaw, the coach. So I like Stanford's over as well. You mentioned USC and JT Daniels. I'm going to go over on USC, over the 7 as well. And I don't like the coach, Clay Helton. I think Lynn Swan, the AD, is maybe the only person in the country that thought it would be a good idea to keep Clay Helton as coach. But I love Graham Harrell as the offensive coordinator in the air raid. And at some point, I think you got to bet on talent. Like JT Daniels, despite the fact that he was not super impressive last year as a true freshman, he's a 5-star recruit. He's clearly got the ability. USC, maybe with the exception of Alabama, Jerry Jeudy and company, has the best wide receiving core in the country in terms of talent. And they're going to be running this high-tempo air raid offense that's going to minimize mistakes made by the offensive line, get the ball out quickly. So I just think that talent's going to win the day for USC. I think they're going to win 8 games at minimum. So I like over USC, and I'm with you also on your over Stanford bet.
The USC one's a tricky one for me. They have a tough road schedule. They have to go to BYU, which I think is tricky. They have a favorable home schedule. I believe Oregon comes to Southern California, obviously.
But the schedule's brutal for USC, especially in the early season. There's no doubt about it. So, they got to beat Fresno State in that opener. It's going to be incumbent on them to get off to a good start, obviously, which makes you a little worried. But, the number is 7. I feel like this is, the way I like to classify these bets, these over-under win totals. It's some of them are push under or push over. To me, I don't really see a scenario where USC goes 6-6. So to me, this is a push over. So I think in worst case, we push and they win 7 games. And best case, I think we win most of the time with that over. So I am a little worried about the schedule, but I do think they should be able to at least push this bet at 7.
Yes, I think that's a push for me. I have them at 7-5 because of that tough schedule. They have to go to Notre Dame too, which won't be easy. SEC, there's a lot of interesting ones on here. I'll have you go first. Nick Kostos, who do you like in the SEC in terms of a win total?
I've really been going with some big teams here, right? So I gave you Oklahoma, I gave you USC, I gave you Ohio State. This one I'm going to go a little bit off the beaten path here to a team that's not at the top of the SEC. And I'm going to go Mississippi State. Joe Moorhead, former Fordham head coach of a Fordham alum. So I love Joe Moorhead, but I am not feeling Joe Moorhead and the Bulldogs this season in Starkville. So I'm going to go under 8 on Mississippi State. I will say that when this number opened around 8.5, I liked it a lot more when it was under 8.5. I still like it at under 8. This is a push under bet for me, right? So I think at best Mississippi State will win 8 games. Mississippi State lost a ton of defensive talent from last year into this year. And Joe Moorhead, while a fantastic offensive coordinator at Penn State, I think you have to look at last year as a massive disappointment. Dan Mullen left Mississippi State to go to Florida last year. If Mullen had stayed at Mississippi State last year, I think it would have been an entirely different season because last year was the year with Nick Fitzgerald in his final year there, with all the talent on that defense that Mississippi State was supposed to challenge for an SEC. Mullen goes to take the job at Florida. Joe Moorhead comes in. Mississippi State has a disappointing season. So Moorhead in year 1 did not show me a lot. They lost a ton of talent. So for me, I think it's one of my favorite win total bets in all of college football. And again, I like it more at 8.5, but I'll still take it at 8. Mississippi State under 8.
Yeah, I have them going 7-5. I did my predictions last night, which I am going to do a special podcast on my own where I give out all my predictions. And I have Mississippi State under 8 as well. I don't want to give away all my picks, but yeah, I have them under 8. -130, by the way, for the under. I like Kentucky over 6.5. It's minus 130. Yes, they lost Josh Allen and a lot of other pieces, but I just think that their schedule is very, very favorable. And they have Florida at home, who that probably is a loss on paper, but I wouldn't rule that out as a win. And plus, they have some other middle tier SEC schools coming into their house. Their non-con's favorable, so I'm gonna go Kentucky over 6.5. Would not be surprised if they went 8-4.
I got to tell you, I give you a lot of credit for making that pick because I think just on the surface, people are going to look at Kentucky and say, Benny Snell now in the NFL, Josh Allen in the NFL, and want to go under. So I kind of like that contrarian play by you going over on Kentucky when I feel like a lot of people will want to go under.
Minus 130 on the over for Kentucky, by the way, and then the under's plus 110. I have it pulled up on FanDuel here. But yeah, minus 130 for Kentucky over, so the public tends to agree with me on that call, and you with Mississippi State. Group of 5 or independent? I'll go first on this one. I'm going with an independent school that I think that surprised some folks last year, and their win total is only 5.5, and that's Liberty. They have a favorable schedule. They have to play New Mexico State.
Hugh Freeze, yeah, Hugh Freeze. I love it. I love this prediction by you.
Yes, Hugh Freeze, the old Ole Miss coach. Liberty's minus 140 over 5.5, and I would jump on that. They have a favorable schedule. They say New Mexico State twice, and then I believe they have a couple FCS schools coming to town, and then they have UMass, they have Rutgers, who stinks. So, over 5.5, minus 140, I love Liberty, and I think that they can go 6-6 or even 7-5 if things broke right.
I'm trying to right now, I didn't have this up here, but I'm looking for it right now because I want to make sure I say this here. I forget who Liberty's playing in week 1. They're playing Syracuse in week number 1 on August 31st. Syracuse is a 17.5-point favorite. The total is 66. I think they're going to go way over that total in that game, so I'm going to take the over in that game. I may even take Liberty plus 17.5 against Syracuse in that spot. So, love the call by you. Love Hugh Freeze, and I think they're going to put up a ton of points on offense this year with Liberty. I'm not going to go independent. I'm going to go group of 5, and I'm going to go back to one of the big schools here. And I want to say that I love this under pick. UCF under 9.5. This feels to me, this 9.5, and them being ranked 17th in the country, feels like it's like a lifetime achievement award almost. It's like them saying it's like when the Academy Awards, like at the Oscars, when they give like the lifetime achievement award to someone who's never won an Oscar before at the end of their career. It's like getting the Rolex when you retire and they send you on your way. It's almost like they're saying hey UCF, congratulations on what you've been able to accomplish the last couple of years. We're sorry we never put you in the playoff, but here you go, a number 17 ranking and a 9.5 win total. No way, no how. The further they get away from the Scott Frost, Mackenzie Milton era. Milton was a special quarterback, and not just a special quarterback in that he's good, so he tears up inferior competition. Mackenzie Milton was an absolute stud, a real stud, and that injury that he suffered sucks. It's awful. And then Darryl Mack, who played decently against LSU in that bowl game, he was going to be their starter. He breaks his ankle. He's out. So now it's Brandon Wimbush is the starting quarterback for UCF, the Notre Dame transfer, who, had a big win over Michigan in his career as a Notre Dame quarterback, but got replaced by Ian Book. You have questions about his ability to throw the ball down the field, although he is a talented runner, and I just don't see it this year for UCF. Again, further away from Frost, further away from Milton, UCF under 9.5. I think that total is at least one win off. That total should be 8.5, not 9.5.
Interesting call. They have to play a team that we talked about earlier, Stanford, at home.
They'll lose that game. They will lose that game to Stanford. No doubt about it in my mind.
Should be interesting, because I remember Stanford lost to San Diego State a few years ago, and I remember Steve Coughlin, Stanford Steve, called that upset. He's a Stanford fan, and he called that upset, and he was right. I probably would pick Stanford in that game, too, because I think that Stanford's a good team, and they're ranked preseason as well. I think they're 24 if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a possible loss, so I would not rule that pick out at all. All right, let's switch over to the Heisman real quick. Trevor Lawrence is your favorite at 2-1. I have the odds pull up. What's a good value pick for you for the Heisman? Let's take Tua and Trevor out of it. I think one of those guys will probably win, but let's just take those two out of it. But what's a good value pick, you would say?
That's such a tough question because, when you say, like, and I understand, like, why you ask the question the way that you do, like, I totally get it, but, like, how can we take those guys out of the equation? Like, if that's fair. You know, like, how can we take Trevor Lawrence and Tua Tagovailoa out of the equation for the Heisman Trophy? Like, those really are, like, those are going to be the guys. Like, one of those two guys is going to win the Heisman Trophy this year, and I personally think that it's almost a lock that it's going to be Trevor Lawrence. So, I mean, I guess, like, Jake Fromm would be a guy that you could potentially look at, because I actually like Georgia to win the SEC this year over Alabama, and Fromm may get it in that case. I think Joe Burrow is a guy at LSU. If they let Joe Burrow sling the rock around a little bit, I think he's going to put up monster numbers, and I'm actually a big fan of LSU this year. I think they're going to destroy Texas when they play them early on in the season. But value-wise, like, I don't know that there is any value. Like, Clemson's going to score 40 points a game. Trevor Lawrence is the best, I think, the best college quarterback. Some people may say Andrew Luck. I may go back as far as Peyton Manning for Trevor Lawrence. Like, Clemson's winning the national title this year. If Trevor Lawrence is healthy, Clemson is not losing a game. That's how good Trevor Lawrence could start in the NFL right now, and he's not going to be eligible until after next season to enter the NFL draft. So, like, there are, like, we can go with, like, value. DeAndre Swift, the running back from Georgia. Like, there are Justin Fields, you know, if you believe in Justin Fields. There are ways that you could go with this here, but, like, I can't advocate betting on, like, anyone except for Lawrence or Tua, and if you made me pick, I would take Trevor Lawrence.
I would take, Jake Fromm in terms of a value pick. I agree. I think Trevor Lawrence will win the Heisman Trophy, but Jake Fromm at 20-1 is interesting. Let's say if they go undefeated. Let's say Clemson loses a game somewhere down the road, like at Syracuse or whatever, and Jake Fromm and Georgia go undefeated and they beat Alabama in the SEC title game. Like, Jake Fromm isn't out of the realm of possibility, although, like you said, I think it's going to be Trevor Lawrence as well. And then same could be said about the national title. Like, who is a good bet outside of Clemson and Alabama? Georgia at 10-1. Your Michigan Wolverines at 19-1. I'm saying yours because you like them. You like them more than I do. I'm more of an Ohio State person than a Michigan person. Other than Michigan, possibly at 19-1, Ohio State at 15-1, and Georgia at 10-1, I think it's either going to be Clemson or Alabama that wins the title.
Oh, and I think that's your national championship game again. In fact, like, and I'm not one of these people that, like, hates that. There are some people that are like, oh, I'm bored of Clemson and Alabama. I'm not. I would love to see that happen again, and I think that is the likely. It's either going to be Clemson, Alabama, or Clemson against Georgia. I think that's going to be, or Alabama against Georgia. Like, some combination of those three teams will play in the title game. And again, you're going to make me pick a champion. I'm going with the team that has Peyton Manning. I'm going with Clemson and Trevor Lawrence. Even though they lost a lot of pieces on that defense, they're going to score 40 points a game. But if I have to go outside of those three teams, I can't go with the school from the Pac-12. I can't go with the school from the Big Ten because, like, I like Michigan more than Ohio State, but I don't know that I like Michigan on that level, and I don't like Ohio State on that level. I can't go with the school from the Big 12 because I'm not a huge believer this year in national championship-wise in Oklahoma, and I don't think Texas is on that level just yet. So I'm going to go to the SEC, and certainly not a team in the ACC. So I'm going to go to the SEC, and a team that I just mentioned, LSU. LSU has maybe the best defensive player in the country in Grant Delpit, who's like a Derwin James clone, safety, who's going to be a top 10 pick in the NFL draft. And if they can do what they did, and they hired some coaches this offseason that kind of lead you to believe that this is what they want to do. In that bowl game against UCF, Ed Orgeron and, like, LSU, they finally took the shackles off the passing game. They let Burrow sling it around. They scored a lot of points. Burrow had big stats. LSU's got a ton of talent. And if they open up the offense, I think LSU is a dark horse. And I don't want to say this. I know that, like, people feel highly about them. They're a top 10 team, obviously. But I think that of any team to crack that top three, that triumvirate of Georgia, Bama, and Clemson, I think it's most likely to be LSU.
LSU's interesting. They're 50-1 to win the title. That Texas game to me is tough, though. I know you think they're going to destroy them. I think that's going to be a tough one for them. I would not be surprised if Texas wins that game and you're going to have, like, the Texas is back thing like they did a few years ago after they upset Notre Dame. I believe that was 2016 when they upset Notre Dame. I could see that kind of scenario out for that game. But you never know. I like LSU too, and I like Joe Burrows, but that's just a tough conference. They have to go to Tuscaloosa. They have some other hard games on their schedule. I think they have to go to Auburn too, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm not I don't hate your pick, but at the same time, I think it's risky. Let's switch over to the NFL. We'll do win totals. We'll pick one from every division. Let's start in the AFC East. You can go first on the AFC East. What's your favorite win total there?
I'm going to go under 4.5 on the Miami Dolphins. I think the Jets and the Bills are both hard to call. One of those teams is going to win like 9 games. It's hard for me to kind of predict which one it's going to be. So I acknowledge that one of them is likely to do it. I just don't feel confident enough to bet on either one. And I think that Week 1 game, Bills and Jets, is a very, very tough game to call. The Patriots, I think their win total is 11. They'll hover right around there. I don't think it's a smart bet one way. You never want to fade the Patriots. And I think it's also tough to bet on a team to win 12 games as well. So I would stay away from that win total. The Dolphins are going to be brutal. They've been telegraphing it all season long. Ryan Fitzpatrick stinks. Like, is he capable of having a 4-touchdown game? Yeah, but he's also more capable of having a 4-interception game. And Josh Rosen has not shown anything to me to make me think that this guy's going to be a capable starting quarterback. I think the most likely scenario is that after Week 17, you're going to hear everyone say, well, the Miami Dolphins are now on the clock, and then with the first overall pick in the 2020 NFL Draft, the Miami Dolphins select Tua Tagovailoa, a quarterback from Alabama. So Dolphins under 4.5 would be the way I would go.
Yes, that's the total I had written down, but just to be different, I'm going to go under 6.5 with the Bills. The Bills went 6-10 last year, and I think 6-10 is very likely for them again. They have to play the NFC East. They have to play the Cowboys and the Eagles. They have to play the Patriots twice. I think the Jets are going to be improved, although their schedule is brutal as well. But I just like the Bills, like a slim under 6.5. It's plus 155. By the way, Dolphins under plus 115. So I'm going to go Bills under 6.5 with the big juice of plus 155. So, that's a ballsy call to go against the public on the Buffalo Bills. As much as I like Josh Allen, by the way, I think Josh Allen's going to be an improved player this year. But I'm going to go under 6.5 on the Bills because he took my thunder, the Dolphins.
Got it. So we do AFC North?
AFC North's next. Yes, I'll go first. I like the under on the Cincinnati Bengals. Minus 145 is the number. Like the Dolphins, I think the Bengals are going to be bad. I think they go 5-11 or 4-12. They're easily the worst team in that division. I know you're not big on the Browns, but I don't really mind the Browns. I'm higher on the Browns than you. Steelers, I think, will be a little better than people think. I'm not sure if they're a playoff team, though. I almost went with the Ravens under 8.5, but Lamar Jackson's shown improvements in the preseason, so I just want to stay away from the Ravens. So I'm going to go under 6. I think that the Bengals are another team that's going to be in the Tua Tagovailoa sweepstakes with the Miami Dolphins. Although I think the Dolphins will have a worse record than the Bengals, I wouldn't rule out the possibility that the Bengals draft a quarterback in the first round of the 2020 draft as well. Who do you like in the AFC North in terms of win totals?
And I'll tell you what, with a new head coach in Cincinnati and Zach Taylor and a new offensive scheme and the fact that Andy Dalton's never won a playoff game, it would not surprise me in the slightest if the Bengals get off to a bad start and like season's over, right? Like they start like 3-8 or something like that. If Ryan Finley gets in, the rookie at NC State ends up starting the final couple games of the season for the Bengals instead of Andy Dalton. So I do kind of lean towards the under with Cincinnati as well, and also a very tough division. They're clearly the worst of the 4 teams. You mentioned the Steelers. I do feel pretty good about the Steelers as a playoff team this year. Their secondary has been better than expected this offseason and training camp, and thus far in the preseason. I think Ben's going to have a monster year, and I do think addition by subtraction, get rid of Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell. Now, please don't confuse people that are listening to this. I'm not saying that, like, Brown's not going to be great with the Raiders. He will be if he's there and he's not insane over a helmet. And Le'Veon Bell's going to put up big numbers for the Jets. But, the Steelers have weapons, right? Juju Smith-Schuster is unbelievable. James Conner is really good. They have a first-ballot Hall of Fame quarterback in Ben Roethlisberger. I think Pittsburgh's going to win 10-plus games. I think they win the AFC North. Thus, I will go over their win total of 9.
Yeah, that's a tough one for me because I think that's a push. But if I had to bet over under, I'd say that's a push over for me for the Steelers. I'm higher on the Browns than you are. AFC South, you can go first.
Ooh, the AFC South, I actually have a bet on the Colts over win total of 9. Back when it was 9, it's 9.5 now. And I also have a bet on the Colts to win the AFC South. But the uncertainty right now with Andrew Luck, like we had on the show on You Bet earlier this week, our radio.com NFL insider, Jason Locking at Fora. Jason did not say that Luck was going to definitely miss time in the regular season. But what he said was it really shouldn't be a surprise at this point. if Luck misses a game or two, right? While they get him fully healthy and then he's ready to go. We remember last year that the Colts started 1-5 before they rattled up all those wins to make the postseason and eventually get to the divisional round before bowing out at Arrowhead to Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. I think there's a chance the Colts could get off to a little bit of a shaky start here. So I would be more willing to bet the Colts, once we get into the season a little bit, see how the first month goes, see how Luck looks. And if they're 1-3 or 2-2, then you can kind of adjust it from there, and then you can maybe buy low on the Indianapolis Colts. So the Luck thing, I don't want to give the Colts out as my pick here. So instead, I'll go to Nick Foles, Leonard Fournette, and the Jacksonville Jaguars. That win total is 7.5. I think that Houston's going to regress this year, and I think a lot of people agree with that. So I think Houston will come back to the pack a little bit. They were very lucky last year to have the record they did and to win the AFC South. The Colts were clearly better and handled in that wild card game in Houston. And I'm not a believer in Marcus Mariota, so I can't go with the Titans. So if I have to pick a second-best team in that division, for me, it's unquestionably the Jacksonville Jaguars. Defense is going to be what it is, going to be very good, and the offense is obviously going to be better with Foles over Bortles. So 7.5 for the Jaguars, I feel like, is almost stealing money. I feel like, at worst, that's an 8-8 team.
I don't mind the Jaguars at all. I don't mind that pick. But I'm going to go with the under for the Titans at 8, and it's minus 130. I am surprised that the Titans have a higher win total than the Jaguars. I think the Jaguars are better than the Titans. I'm going to go under 8. Marcus Mariota, to me, is in a bit of a make-or-break situation, similar to Winston in Tampa Bay. But I just don't love Mariota and his health situation. I think the Titans are going to regress this year. So I'm going to go under 8 minus 130 for the Tennessee Titans. And they have to see the Colts twice, but maybe they'll luck out and Luck doesn't play in that week 2 matchup. But I'm not in love with the Tennessee Titans this year, although they've been relevant the last few years in terms of the playoffs and stuff. They made the playoffs a few years ago, beat the Chiefs in that crazy game. And then they were live week 17 last year. But I'm going to go under this year on the Titans. I think that's either a 6-10 or potentially 5-11 team in the Titans. How about the AFC West?
I think the West is tough, right? I kind of want to go under on the Raiders, but I acknowledge the fact that they've got the talent, so I don't want to do that, although I do lead the under. I kind of want to go over with the Denver Broncos because I love Bradley Chubb and Von Miller and that defense, but I do have questions over the course of the 16-game season about the Joe Flacco-led offense. I think the Chiefs are a smart bet under 10.5 because they're going to regress a little bit. I still think they're a playoff team. This is another one of the, and I think I said this about the Big 12 also, right, where I don't really have a good bet here. But if you're going to make me take a side, I would go with the Chargers over 9.5. I think the Chargers have the best defense in the AFC for sure, possibly in the entire NFL. And I think even if Melvin Gordon doesn't play the entire season, which I think is unlikely, I think Gordon will show up at some point, maybe not early in the season, but I do expect Gordon to be there at some point. It's not a monumental loss. It's more like a fantasy football loss than a real-life loss. Eckler and Jackson are fine. Rivers is the straw that stirs the drink on that offense. There's playmakers at literally every level. If the offensive line is even average, the Chargers should win 10 games this season. So I'll go over 9.5 with the Bolts.
That is a really, really good call. I think they win over the total as well. But I'm going to go under on the Raiders. You mentioned the Raiders a couple minutes ago. That's minus 210. Yes, that's big juice. But somebody has to finish last place in that division. I'm going to say it's the Raiders, and I think the Broncos will be a little better than expected, although I'm not a Joe Flacco fan at all. I like the Raiders under 6.5. It's just a circus in Oakland. I think that's a 6-10 team or worse. So I'm going to go with the Raiders under the win total.
Love it.
The NFC East. I have a feeling we're going to agree on the same pick in this one.
I don't think we're going to here. I'm guessing you're going to go under for the Giants. I'm actually not going to go with that. I think the Giants can... Look, it all comes down to, obviously, and like you and I obviously talk about the Giants on Twitter, like if they start Daniel Jones for the majority of the season, they could win 6 games. If it's Eli Manning's exhumed corpse, I'm not so sure. But there's some variance with the Giants right now. There's some unpredictability that I don't really feel comfortable like putting a bet in and having that bet tied up for a number of months when I don't know like who the quarterback's going to be the majority of the season. So I'm going to go instead, and I'm going to be a little contrarian here because I think a lot of people that I talk to are like the under for this particular team and think this team's going to regress, and I disagree. I'm going to go over 9 for the Dallas Cowboys, which is even money plus 100. I kind of don't understand this win total, and I kind of get the fact that people are referring to the Eagles as the favorite in the division. I think that's fine. That like if you think Philly be better this year with Travis Frederick back from Guillain-Barré syndrome. They're all pro center. So, this win total of 9, Jason Garrett would have to, literally screw up, 2 or 3 games himself. And I do acknowledge that possibility because he's not a great head coach. But, this win total of 9 for the Cowboys, they should win against the Giants and the Redskins. They should go 3-1 at worst. And I think they'll split with the Eagles, so they go 4-2 in the division. And I just think that they are a very good football team and a real contender to go to the Super Bowl at least out of the NFC. So I'll go over 9 for the Cowboys.
I absolutely love the Cowboys call, and I don't get why the Eagles are being talked about so much in terms of they're significantly better than the Cowboys. I think that's a lazy narrative. I'm picking the Dallas Cowboys to win the NFC East this year, so that's a spoiler alert for my NFL podcast. So I love the Cowboys. I think that's a 10-6 team. I do think Zeke's back for week 1. I think they're all back for week 1. They have so much talent on that team. I totally agree with you on the Cowboys over, but I'm going on the Giants under. Their schedule is so hard. They have to go to Dallas. I know they have some winnable games early, at Tampa Bay, home Bills, home Cardinals middle of the year. But I think other teams are looking at their games, say Tampa, for example, home against the Giants. Oh, that's a winnable game. I think the Giants kind of split those games. They have to go at the Lions, too, and I don't think the Lions are going to be good. I'll talk about them in a minute, but I think the Giants are a 5-11 football team, and you'll see Daniel Jones, mid-season. I don't feel good about it. I think it's more likely a push under rather than a full-on under, but I think that's the Giants go 5-11, and I just don't think their defense is good at all. Despite
I think you could very well be right about that, and I have major questions about it as well, about their defense, yes.
Yes, the defense stinks in my opinion, so I'm going to go Giants under 6, -140. I hope I'm wrong on this pick, obviously. I want the Giants to be good. It'd be good for me, it'd be good for you, good for New York sports if the Giants were good. Redskins, I thought about picking their under, but I think that's a 6-10 team, if not 5-11, and I like Dwayne Haskins despite his rough preseason. Let's go to the NFC North now. That's an interesting division in my opinion. Who do you like there?
I think the NFC North is a very interesting division because I think you can make a case, legitimately, for 3 of the 4 teams to potentially win the division. Now, I like the Vikings to win. So I'll give you 2 here, and I think they kind of go hand in hand. The Packers are kind of an impossible team for me to predict. I don't like the head coach, Matt LaFleur, but I also simultaneously acknowledge that any team with the healthy Aaron Rodgers ceiling, ultimate upside, is to win a world championship. So I'm staying away from the Packers right now. I want to see how they perform early in the regular season. I like the Vikings over 9, and I think the Vikings will win the NFC North. And I also like the Bears under 9.5. I just don't like the way Matt Nagy has run this offseason, the obsession with the Cody Parkey double doink in the wild card loss against the Eagles. The defense is going to regress, not because the players aren't good, but because defense is less sticky year to year than offense, and it's just statistically unlikely that the Bears' defense is going to be as good. Plus, they lose Vic Fangio to Denver, Chuck Pagano, the new defensive coordinator, and Mitchell Trubisky is going to have to take not just a small step forward, but a large step forward if the Bears are going to win 12 games again. I think it's more likely that the Bears go 8-8 than it is that they go 12-4. If it were 9, I would maybe lay off of it, but I think the fact that it's 9.5 really makes me like this Bears under win total. So I'd go Vikings over 9 and also Bears under 9.5.
I like your Vikings call better than your Bears call. I just think that Khalil Mack's a monster on the Bears defense. And I like Trubisky, but I don't love him. And I like Mike Montgomery, so I still like the Bears to make the playoffs. And I think the Vikings are a playoff team too. And I think the Vikings are capable of winning the NFC North, although a lot of people on Twitter killed me because I said the Vikings were underrated. And people killed me because they're killing Kirk Cousins. But I'm going to go with the Lions under 6.5. I just think that team is not very good. Plus 110, by the way, on the Lions under. I'm not a Matt Patricia fan. They have to play those teams twice each, and I think they go 2-4 against that trio on top of their division. They're clearly the worst team in that division. Matt Stafford puts up the fantasy numbers, but I just don't really love the Lions' schedule at all. I just think that that's a 6-10 or worse type of football team in the Lions. What do you make about the Lions?
I wouldn't bet it either way. I think there's a scenario where the Lions could win 7 games this season. I like their defense quite a bit. I really like their defensive line, and I love Matthew Stafford, but they want to run the football. Like they're going back to the future here with the offense here with Darrell Bevel running the show for that offense. It's gonna be a lot of carry on Johnson. So I kind of want to lay off on the Lions because I think they have sneaky potential to like win 7 or 8 games. But like I also would not be shocked if they go like 5-11 and Matt Patricia gets fired.
Yeah, I feel like that scenario, the latter one, is kind of likely because they're just clearly the worst team in that division. And as much as I like Kerryon Johnson, Matt Stafford's a good fantasy quarterback, I just don't love Patricia at all. What about the NFC South? This is an interesting division, and I think that there's an obvious sleeper that can win this division. That I don't want to give that away. And then there's obviously the favorite in the Saints, and then I mentioned the Bucks a couple minutes ago, and then the Panthers are interesting too. Who do you like there?
The Cam Newton foot injury last night on Thursday night kind of really sucked, and like the expectation is that he'll be good to go for Week 1 when they host the LA Rams. And if Cam's healthy for that game, I do like the Panthers plus the 3 in that spot. I have a Panthers over win total bet, and it's actually my favorite win total bet in the entire NFL this season is Panthers over 7.5. Now, I will say that, like, obviously, like, it makes you feel not as good about it, that the quarterback, left the game last night in the preseason. But if Cam is healthy for 16 games, and I think we have to operate under that assumption, or we don't, I'm kind of, like, in the weeds on this one because, like, I'm so confident in the Panthers. But if Cam's going to have, like, injury stuff going on this season, then, like, then they could easily go under because it's like, without Cam, like, Kyle Allen, Taylor Heineke, Will Grier, like they are not going to win football games, not in that division. So a little bit of cold water going on my Panthers pick. I bet it already and I like it, so I'll stick with it, but I don't feel as good. So aside from Carolina, I'll go under with the Saints, under that 10.5. The win total is way too high. I think that, this is a 10-win team probably more often than it is an 11 or 12-win team. Drew Brees is not the same quarterback. That doesn't mean he sucks, don't get me wrong, but he's just not the same guy he once was, and his arm strength is clearly deteriorated. So, and it's a tough division. The Falcons will be better. The Panthers will be better. The Bucks will be better. So I like the Saints under 10.5 along with the Panthers over 7.5.
I disagree with you on the Saints. I know a lot of people are down on them about the whole debacle in the NFC title game with the no call. I remember I was out at the bar watching that game and everybody was just flipping out, going crazy. And there's the case to be made that they won't recover from that. But I just like the talent on their offense. Drew Brees isn't in his prime anymore, but he's still good. I love Kamara. I love Michael Thomas. Michael Thomas is, in my opinion, a top 3 receiver in the league. He's so good. And I love Kamara. So I like the over Saints. I'm going to do 2 here, too. And I'm going to go with the Falcons over 8.5. I think that is a 9-7 or better football team. By the way, minus 135 on the Falcons over. And I don't mind their coach, Dan Quinn, although he's made some mistakes before. I know you're not a Dan Quinn fan. I don't mind him, really. I'm not saying he's the best, but he got a team to a Super Bowl. Matt Ryan still's in his prime. Devontae Freeman's good. I like that offense. Calvin Ridley and Julio Jones. Their defense has some pieces, too. So I like the Falcons over 8.5. I think that's a 9-7 or better football team. And if Ezekiel Elliott is out for the regular season or some games, I might pick the Falcons to make the playoffs over the Cowboys. But I'm assuming Zeke's back, so I have the Cowboys in instead of the Falcons. And I think the Eagles end up making it as well. What do you make about Atlanta?
I don't like the coach, and I think the Saints are better than the Falcons. I think the Panthers are better than the Falcons. So it wouldn't surprise me if the Panthers won 9 games, but I would stay away from that team.
You would stay away from the Falcons? Yeah. The Cam thing scares me for the Panthers. I would bet they're over if I knew Cam was healthy. Cam's not healthy right now, so that's why I'm staying away from the Panthers. NFC West.
The NFC West, I feel like, is an interesting division. I would like to go under on the LA Rams, but I feel like, for the same reasons for the Saints, just because I feel like they'll regress a little bit. It's a really high win total. But I feel like they are clearly the best team in the division. They're better than Arizona. They're better than the 49ers. And they're better than the Seattle Seahawks. And I think people are kind of overvaluing the Seahawks this season. Seattle is at 8.5. This defense for the Seahawks is terrible. Like, I think that people are still, like, confused and think, like, this is, like, the Legion of Boom defense for Seattle. They're all gone. There's going to be no pass rush on this team. Frank Clark's not there anymore. And they have this antiquated offensive scheme with Brian Schottenheimer running the show, where, like, if you told me they were going to play up-tempo, let Russell Wilson throw the ball 40 times a game, I might be apt to take the over. But they're going to be running the ball constantly, and the defense stinks. And I think the Rams are better, and I think that there are other teams in the NFC that are better. So I'm going to go under 8.5 with Russell Wilson and the Seattle Seahawks. How about that?
I love that pick. And it's sad, though, because I'm a big Russell Wilson fan. He's really has grown on me over the since he's been a rookie in the league. Since he's been in the league, I loved Russell Wilson. But I agree with you on the Seahawks under because of the reasons you mentioned, because of their defense being so bad. Jerron Reed suspended first 6 games. To go with a different pick, that would have been my pick, but you stole it. I'm going to go under 5 with the Cardinals. I don't feel good about this pick at all. Maybe I'm overreacting a little bit to Kyler Murray in that preseason game. Do I think Kyler Murray is going to be a good quarterback in time? Yeah, I do like Kyler Murray, but I don't like the Cardinals this year. I don't think their defense is good, and their schedule is tough. They have to play the Rams twice. I thought about 49ers under, but to me that's a team that could go 8-8. But Arizona to me is a team that I think could go 4-12. Although I would not rule out a push here at 5-11 plus 100 on the Cardinals under. By the way.
Yeah, I would love to kind of pound the table for the Cardinals to go over here because I love Kyler Murray, but the defense stinks and the offensive line stinks, and there's a lot of unknown with the coach. I would stay away from it, but like if you made me pick, I think it's probably a push under scenario for the Cardinals at 5.
Yes, I agree with that. That feels like a push for me. Let's talk about the MVP odds real quick. Trying to pull them up. Player features. Here we go. Patrick Mahomes 6-1. Andrew Luck's 9-1. So they seem to think that he might be back for Week 1. That does feel like an enticing pick. But who's your MVP pick right now in terms of a odds standpoint?
You know, I hate to continue beating the drum here, beating a dead horse, but I love the value with Cam Newton at 50-1. But I don't know if that's really something I'm excited to do. If if Cam's got this foot injury going into week number 1, but the theoretical value on Cam Newton is through the roof at 50-1. I also like Phil Rivers and Ben Roethlisberger at their spots, and I'm not sure what the updated numbers are as of right now. But I think the Chargers will win a lot of games this year. I think the Steelers will win a lot of games this year. So those would be the 3 guys I would look at. And one other dark horse quarterback, if you're going to be a quarterback and win the award, or anyone to win the award, really, you got to be on a team that wins a lot of games. And I think the Vikings have an outside chance to win 11 or 12 games this year. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but if it does, and Kirk Cousins plays turnover-free football and he plays well in big spots, I think the media tide will turn the other way for Cousins, and people are going to start giving him a lot of credit, whereas he got a lot of criticism last year. So I think, I'm not saying he's going to win or that I would bet on him to win it. Cam would be my long shot pick, but I think you could do worse by throwing a dart for MVP value-wise at Kirk Cousins, and I think Cousins right now is around 30 or 35-1.
Cousins is 40-1. An interesting dark horse pick, in my opinion. I'm not going to say he's going to win the MVP, but Dak Prescott at 50-1 seems very... I don't like those odds at all for him. They should be more like 30-1 for Dak. And meanwhile, Carson Wentz in the media darling Philadelphia Eagles, 14-1. Meanwhile, Carson Wentz should be 25-30-1. But my favorite pick on the board, I'm scared as hell because he might not even play Week 1, but I love the Colts, and I love Andrew Luck at 9-1. I think that he should be closer to Patrick Mahomes in the odds rather than Aaron Rodgers at 10-1. And Mahomes, by the way, 6-1. And I love Patrick Mahomes, by the way, but I love Andrew Luck this year, and I think he's on a better team than Patrick Mahomes. So him at 9-1 to me is very enticing. And by the way, Big Ben 29-1 and Phil Rivers at 20-1. Russell Wilson at 20-1 too, but we don't like the Seahawks this year. And our boy Saquon Barkley's at 34-1, but I don't see that happening either. Jimmy G 40-1. Ezekiel Elliott 41. I love looking at these MVP odds, all these long shot MVP odds. It's hilarious. But my favorite pick right now, I'd say, is Andrew Luck, although I'm holding my breath on it because he's injured. But let's say he's hurt, then I wouldn't rule out Matt Ryan at 26-1. I think that's interesting as well as your Big Ben call for MVP. Let's switch over to the Super Bowl before we go. The Super Bowl odds are interesting. The favorite right now is the Patriots, the repeat at 7-1. Chiefs are 8-1. Saints 9-1, and everybody else is in double and triple digits. Who do you like for Super Bowl odds?
Would you believe me if I said that I kind of liked the Carolina Panthers?
That's
as a potential Super Bowl. I mean, like I was kind of all in on the Panthers before the scam. The Panthers will kind of be my dark horse pick to win the Super Bowl. I'm going to give you a really boring pick here, and I hate to do it, but like, who's going to beat the Patriots? Like, who's beating New England this year? Like, I think that Belichick owns Andy Reid, so if they play the Chiefs, they'll beat the Chiefs. He owns Phillip Rivers and the Chargers. I think they'd beat the Chargers. He owns Tomlin and Roethlisberger. He owns the Steelers. So, and then like I'll take the Patriots against the Eagles, against the Rams again, against the Cowboys, whomever it is. Packers doesn't make a difference to me. I know they're the favorite, and it's not a sexy pick, and it's not like maybe like an exciting answer, but I don't see how you pick against the New England Patriots to win a world championship.
That's the safest bet in my opinion, but I'm going to keep the Colts trend going. 15-1 right now is Indy. I think that I got him at 12-1, but now I'm mad at myself because the odds dropped, and that's probably because of the luck uncertainty. Meanwhile, the luck 9-1 MVP odds remain the same. I really just like this Colts team. They have an underrated defense that really helped them lead the way last year, and I'm a big Luck fan. I've always loved Andrew Luck since he came into the NFL, and if he's healthy, I can see a world where the Colts have home field advantage in the playoffs, and the Patriots are your 2 or even 3 seed. So I think that home field in the playoffs is important, although New England got to the Super Bowl last year and won it without home field advantage in the AFC title game.
I'm with you. I think the Colts, assuming Luck is healthy, will be the biggest challenger to the Patriots. So I'm totally with you on the Indianapolis Colts.
Yes, I do love the Indianapolis Colts. And then another interesting one, we talked about the Cowboys a little bit. They right now are 25-1, and the Philadelphia Eagles right now are 14-1. Again, with this Eagles-Cowboys thing. They are closer than people think. I agree with you there. Oh my goodness, this is really not making me happy, although I hate both of those teams, but the Cowboys should really have closer odds to the Eagles than what's being shown here on FanDuel. Chargers 16-1. Your Pittsburgh Steelers that you like out of the AFC North 21-1. Panthers 50-1. Vikings 30-1. So many interesting odds. You're not a Cleveland Browns person. They're 16-1. But yeah, this should be a really fun season. I'm so happy I got to have you on today. And I probably would like to have you on again maybe in October before the NBA season. We'll talk about their over-unders and whatnot. Sounds good?
Great. I'm looking forward to it. And again, truly think you're one of the up-and-coming stars in the sports media. Very happy to come on and would love to do it anytime. Thank you very much for having me.
No problem. Hope you have a good day.
You too.